crypto legislation in Europe, opportunities and challenges of MiCA.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. We have an absolutely stellar panel that you guys are really going to enjoy listening to. We are going to be talking this morning about MiCA and some of the challenges, the excitement, and everything else surrounding it. The way that we'll commence this is I'll introduce myself, and then I'll let my panelists introduce themselves, and then I'm going to start firing some questions at them. By the way, they have no idea what questions I'm going to ask them, and they've been very, very cool about it, so hats off to them. So I'm Cal Evans. I'm the Managing Associate of Gresham International. I'm a lawyer, I'm an author, I'm a writer, and I also consult with a number of governments all over the world. This is my 5th year at AIBC, so it's great to be back. It's good to see so many familiar faces, and good to see so many new ones as well. Kevin, we'll start with you, and we'll work our way down.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm CEO at Kyrrex. Kyrrex is an exchange. We're actually more than just an exchange, but in this setting, I'm representing Kyrrex as a licensed entity in Malta. We, in 2021, we got a Class 4 license, and like most of other operators in the market right now are waiting for the switch to MiCA.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Maruska. I'm the Chief Compliance Officer of FalconX Limited. Again, which is one of the first entities to have been licensed in Malta way back in 2021. We offer OTC and custody here in Malta, but our group also operates in various jurisdictions around the world.
Hi, my name is Tanja. I'm head of legal of Acre Group. We operate within the fintech space for the past 10 years. Have a couple of verticals, mostly in crypto and the traditional finance space as well, both from the liquidity side and also the technology provider side.
Good morning. My name is Galyna. I'm an associate at WH Partners. Particularly, I'm forming part of the fintech team at the firm. So we are primarily advising crypto projects on their licensability. Obviously, we also assist with getting crypto license in Malta, as well as with transitioning from the current regulatory framework in Malta to MiCA license. And we also assist clients when it comes to the classification of their tokens under MiCA and also under the current framework that we have in Malta as well.
Very cool. Thank you all for that introduction. And then one piece of housekeeping I give on every legal panel. There are lawyers, there are compliance experts up here, but they're not your lawyers and they're not your compliance experts. So anything we say is not legal advice, and you can't hold that against us. So MiCA, heavily debated, much anticipated. Europe's golden goose for the solution that is crypto, right? It's the solution to all of the crypto questions that came up. Many of us have been studying it, looking at it. So I'm interested to know your thoughts as European players as to what some of the biggest challenges are that companies that are already operating in the EU are going to face during and through the transition period. I know it's not much of a transition period, but we'll call it that. So let's start at the far end and we'll work our way down.
Obviously, I think that from you guys, from the operator side, you will have also much more to say. But us, from like a regulatory and legal side, what we're seeing primarily that in Malta, for example, let's start from the beginning. So in Malta, for example, we have this virtual financial assets framework. So the framework was established back in 2018, and MiCA is practically a copy-paste of this framework when it comes to crypto asset service providers. So obviously, then when it comes to other EU member states where there was a simple registration, with the ML authority, the entities that were actually operating there, it's going to be a really big challenge for them to now actually get a proper license when it comes to compliance, when it comes to prudential requirements. So I think that this is one of the biggest challenges. But then also another problem is that So while in Malta, obviously, we had this framework already, and the regulator is quite experienced. The regulator knows what to do, specifically Malta Financial Assets, Malta Financial Services Authority. Then in other countries, they are not that much, the regulators are not that much aware what to do. So it will take some time, obviously, for them to learn, and obviously it will take some time for them to properly also guide their applicants. I think this is the main points from my end.
Okay, and I completely agree with everything that Gali said, and I'm just going to add on a couple of points. So basically, as Gali pointed out, the regulators in the different jurisdictions are inexperienced compared to, let's say, Malta. So the operators themselves as well were operating in an unlicensed environment. They were just operating under the registration due to AML, right? So they'll experience compliance challenges that they won't know how to tackle. They won't have the experience. On the same side, I don't think we have enough people who are experienced in what we're doing. So you'll need help from the external advisors, you'll need your own compliance team, you'll need your own tech and operational team in order to get yourself to a certain standard. So those are definitely the challenges, and then obviously we'll see the bottlenecks when it comes to the issuance of the licenses. So and in fact, we've seen that in Malta in 2018. So I think everything that was happening here is now just going to happen all around Europe.
Sure. So it sounds like Malta's pretty future-proofed, right?
Yes,
it's
it
been
is.
ready for it. Yep.
The closer we come to you, the more we start saying, I agree, I agree. So, same thing from my end. I mean, it much depends on where you're licensed, where you're operating. I mean, for us people here in Malta who have been licensed since most of us 2021, the transition to MiCA has been quite easy. What we're doing, most of us, is simply, polishing some policies, procedures, making sure they are updated. Because really and truly, we've been used to this kind of supervision. And I would dare to say that in some instances, MiCA is lighter than the current VFA regulation. In addition to that, as my colleagues have said, the regulators in Malta have an open door policy. So if we have something to discuss with them, if we have any issues, we have consultation sessions, we have one-to-one sessions with them, and that has been extremely helpful. The issue of the resources, it's always a challenge, especially as Tanja has mentioned, like I operate in the field of compliance. So it's not easy to find people who are knowledgeable on the sector and knowledgeable on MiCA and on the VFA framework. But all in all, I mean, I think that we are moving quite well indeed.
Not to repeat the same, because I fully agree. Like, Malta is so advanced in terms of, let's say, where we stand from. When you compare the regulatory climate and the, let's say, current agreement on whether they're going to even implement any regulation in the near future, Europe is by far the most advanced, and that we can agree upon. What is also a benefit to us as Maltese regulated entities is that we are ready because the foundation was there. The Class 4 license that we have is really and truly was at the biggest stepping stone, and now the next steps are smaller. The main changes maybe would be more on consumer protection that we're seeing in MiCA, elements like even dispute resolution, more transparency on the assets that are being offered, white papers must be issued, the issuer of the assets. And this is something that then turned on us as operators, and we were not prepared, so I'll come to what I think will be the biggest challenge. When there was the whole issue on whether Tether is going to be allowed to be, let's say, listed on European regulated exchanges, although the implementation of the MiCA was applicable for them from July, we as operators were given many different confusing and contradictory messages on whether they do have to be, let's say, banned, whether they don't. Everybody's taking a conservative approach. I have had discussions as well with other market players. We were till the very end waiting, but then we all decided that we want to be compliant. We don't want to risk this. So what I think is going to be a big challenge, because you mentioned it's the golden goose, it's the new thing, we are future-proof. Yeah, the problem is that we're the guinea pigs. And we are going to have to learn by trial and error as well, and by hoping that we don't do any mistakes. We're all, as a culture here in Malta, I have had many meetings in these last 3 years with other operators. We're all very compliance focused, I would say. Like it is the culture in this jurisdiction, which is positive. But that also makes us always conservative and not taking maybe aggressive steps. So one thing that we are concerned about is going to be passporting, which is very, like the biggest reward of being MiCA compliant, and if you do get this license, is going to be passporting. I don't know if I have just a few seconds. I will explain why. Because there is now a rush to who is going to be MiCA licensed first, okay? It's between us operators, it's also sort of a joke or something we talk about, who's going to be in the first batch. Why? Because although there is the grandfathering clause, which will apply for many states who will use it, and that means that regulated operators within member states that do not have MiCA license, they will not be allowed to offer their services to other EU member states unless they get passporting. So under MiCA, this means that while some operators are taking the slow lane and are not worried about it because they are going to be operating under the grandfathering umbrella, what they are not realizing is that the operation must be ceased in any member state in which they are not licensed except the one from which they offer the service. Now, we've had a number of jurisdictions that have claimed that they're going to apply 18 months, some of them 12 months. ESMA said don't exceed 12 months, but they still. Some of them have even removed. I won't get into the names, not to confuse anyone who's operating, but certain member states are not going to apply the grandfathering clause at all. So that means that from 1st January, the operators there, and what happens to these customer accounts and their trading? So what we are now a bit anxious about is how passporting is going to work, because there are some member states, and I leave it to others to comment because I heard it when we were preparing, who are even hinting they won't be accepting immediate passporting, but want to implement their own license. So our biggest, let's say, worry at this stage is not being compliant to MiCA, but seeing how it's going to be enforced and how passporting is going to happen, and if any reverse solicitation is going to be actually prosecuted, because otherwise it's not a level playing field. Otherwise we will be guinea pigs and we will suffer and not gain from MiCA. And this is important now. So the next step, if we don't see clear communication with the operators and enforcement from ESMA, then we are going to be actually at a disadvantage, because we did all the work. It is resource intensive, it is manageable, but it took a lot from us. So then we expect to be treated equally.
Kevin, you're very passionate about this.
I am.
This is something that keeps you awake at night.
It does.
Yeah, okay. Great stuff. So fantastic. Thank you for that. Now, it's very, and I will say this as a UK lawyer, it's very good to see what Europe is doing. It's very good to see that it's being proactive, it's forward-thinking. It's something the EU normally prides itself on when it comes to tech. Even if you guys are guinea pigs down here in Malta, that's okay. We like that. But perhaps we can talk about some of the advantages that you're expecting to see, whether you're an operator or a service provider, and the advantages that companies and users, so end users and companies, can expect to see with the deployment of MiCA. And try not to think like, oh, it's regulated, so it's more trustworthy. Let's be a little bit more honest about that, right? What are some of the actual tangible benefits that you're going to get as we go through? Kevin, I'm going to start with you because you're very impassioned, and then I'm going to work our way down.
Okay, there are many benefits, but let me start with
But
just
I'm
one.
I'm limiting you to 30 seconds.
Exactly, so I'll tell you one. So, for example, the issuing of assets, tokens that are asset-backed. Now there are very clear regulations through MiCA. I'm talking about the consumer, okay? Whereby you have liquidity requirements. It has to be able to provide a par value in terms of payout if the customer asks for that. The white paper must be fair and must be clear and include as well the risk management approach taken by the company to ensure liquidity. So all these things that are new coming to the consumer are going to be very, very, very beneficial. So if anyone is, let's say, conservative and wants to be safer, then trading on a MiCA regulated exchange is going to be definitely much safer, much safer.
Very cool.
From my end, I think that the biggest benefit is the level playing field. That finally we're going to have like one big ruler and everyone is going to be hopefully measured with the same ruler. Given the fact that Malta was one of the first jurisdictions to license and regulate crypto, we were actually competing with many unregulated entities. And we all know that compliance is costly and it's not always pro-business. So we need to be very careful. So I really agree with Kevin. I really hope that this level playing field is enforced across all member states, and that ESMA makes sure that all member states are compliant with this regulation, because ultimately this is a regulation, not a directive. So in theory, everyone should be implementing it in the same manner.
Yeah.
I have to start, yes, that finally we do have a regulation, a harmonized regulation across EU, so that's definitely a benefit, and it's a benefit because it provides you the legal certainty and it provides you the room for innovation as well. So if you actually know what's the legal framework in which you're going to operate, you can scale up your operations, you can actually plan ahead, you can plan long term. You also have an access, and I'm talking about from a Maltese point of view, yes, if you take into consideration the passporting issues and stuff, but if you already have a license here, you actually have quite a big market that you can target. Potential benefit could be the reverse solicitation rule, which the final guidance will get in December 2024, which essentially means that the reverse solicitation will be looked into quite narrow, and it will be treated more as an exception than as a general rule. So that's definitely a benefit. So that means that people who have invested and the operators who have invested all of these efforts in their operations will be protected from the outsiders, right? So people operating from outside of EU.
That's it.
Okay, so obviously I agree with all of you. And yes, for sure that now it's the regulatory framework is harmonized, right? It applies to the entire European Union area, and with this, hopefully, the banks would be also more open. Yes, the banks will be hopefully more open to open accounts to crypto asset service providers, because finally they were regulated. They will be operating in the properly regulated environment, which is literally the same throughout the entire union. So yes, this is one of the things that I'm really obviously hoping for. And then another thing that I would like to point out is obviously from the consumer perspective as well. Finally, consumers will be more protected, especially like Kevin mentioned, from the token issuance side, but not only from the asset reference tokens, also even from the normal crypto asset side as well. The consumers will have in certain situations the right of withdrawal, which usually they don't have when it comes to volatile assets. So yes.
Good. All very positive. I can't get you guys to disagree on anything. This is amazing. Okay, so we have 2 minutes left. If you were having a conversation with somebody who's looking to enter the European market, knowing everything you know with your experience with MiCA, because this is a running theme, experience is key, what would be the one piece of advice or one piece of information you would impart on a client, an operator, a service provider, if they weren't operating in the EU and were looking to transition into operations in the EU within the crypto space? And we're going to start this way and work our way down. Oh, yes.
I'm going to be biased, okay? So obviously,
Everyone is going to say the same thing.
yes, I would just advise to come to Malta, because we have well-established framework even before MiCA, and we have experienced regulator, we have experienced industry as well. So yes, I would definitely suggest to come to Malta and set up their operations here.
Okay, good.
There's nothing to add.
You're going to say the same thing, aren't you? You're gonna, yep,
exactly.
Yep.
There's nothing to add.
Adding slightly, we are a small community, and most of us know each other, either because we used to work together, mostly in the traditional finance, and that is also very helpful. Like, for example, in my case, in compliance, it's not a question of competition or of business, but it's mostly implementing the same things in different business models. So even the fact that we are able to talk to each other and meet in these events and share experiences is something which is very positive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kevin?
Since everyone is being biased, I can say that also working with an already regulated entity like us, in your build-up to getting a license is something that can be done. Sometimes operators think I have to go all the way, get the license at the end, and then start operating. No, if you look at the guidelines that we have to follow, we are actually even allowed to white label part of our services as long as we are still in control of the customer from beginning to end of the journey, be it compliance, be it data control, be it safeguarding funds, etc. So that is also a solution, partnering up with a licensed entity like us and starting off, getting the advice. And this is something that we already do. We don't need to see each other always as competitors, but definitely Malta is by far the best place if you want to enter the market and you want the regulator to act like a supporter and not as a warden. Then Malta is the place to be, for sure.
Good. Guys, this has been fantastic. We joked, we said we could speak about this all day, and we really could. If we'd have had longer, I'd have got you all to disagree on something, I'm sure. But thank you all for joining us. Feel free to grab any of our panelists afterwards, and let's have a big round of applause.
Bravo. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.